Hey everyone, I'm Tassinix, and I'm here with TJ from the Plotting and Scheming podcast, as well as one of my patrons, Striker. We're here today to talk about how to use HotUtils to remod your account, remod your roster using the powerful automation feature. TJ, how you doing today?
Good, man. Nervous on trying to do a teacher's perspective with my old ADHD self, but we'll do our best.
We've been doing it for years. We're old pros at it. We may not be content creation pros, but we'll get the job done. Striker, how you doing?
Well, you guys said you needed to do this for dummies, and I'm quite comfortable being a dummy. So, yeah, we're good.
All right,
Let's go.
Pleasure to have you. Okay, so folks, as a precondition, you do need to have a HotUtils chili level subscription. Variety of ways to get it. It's possible depending on your guild. You might have a subscription granted to you through your guild. You can sign up directly to HotUtils. There's also content creators like me that you can bundle with to get access to HotUtils chili level. But regardless of how you get there, that is the minimum that you need. Once you've logged in, this is going to be your homepage here. And before we get really started about using any of this stuff, a couple notes about best practices. First things first, Striker, go ahead and click the recycle icon right there. Yes, right next to the mod count. So this is going to refresh and sync HotUtils' knowledge of your mods in-game as they are just right now. You'll see just to the right of the little spinning symbol at the top of the screen is his mod count. That's his inventory in-game. He's got 463 of 500 mod slots full that you can see right there. So that brings us to the next item here on best practices. The goal of this automation is to produce a loadout that you can then apply to your roster. It's going to move around all of those mods, re-equip them to the characters, and have it set for you in-game. But to do that, there's a couple errors that can come up if you don't take the right preparation. Striker, if you could hit the loadouts down there in the mods section. Mods, loadouts. And when you make a loadout and we're finished with the automation process, you'll have something that looks like this where you can go and click one of these loadouts to put it into game. You'll see this second one here says it has an error that says this action sequence requires you to free up 276 more inventory spaces. So we could create a loadout where you're done. You completed the automation, everything's good to go, you're ready to go and put it in game and you get this error. And what that means is he'd have to clear, so he has 463 of 500 mod slots full. He'll have to free up another 276 before this could go ahead and load it directly. Now, there's a couple ways to deal with this. The least savory of which is to do what's called splitting the loadout, in my opinion. This is something that very experienced users can do, but what it does is it'll cut the loadout into any number of slices. And that way, if you're kind of constricted on your free mod space, then you can have one loadout cut into 10, into 50, however many little pieces you need, but then it's going to have to load them in sequence. And heaven forbid you have an issue halfway along the way. The progress would be lost. I just don't like to mess with it. So
I'm going to give you two pieces of editing that needs to be put in and why this is so serious. So it's not to cut you off task,
no,
but this is big. One, we want to talk about that 463 is extra space. To give you a point of reference, I currently, and I just did my data 30 minutes ago, I have 106 compared to his 463. There is a threshold where split or some of the other factors to move do not work. So it is very important.
Well, let's not get too deep into split. That's that's a very advanced topic. But
it's just a note that I'm not worried about all other spaces. When you see the red and you're that far the numbers, the other things you're trying to do will not work, so you can't load. That's the only way I wanted to make sure we call that out. That red number is very important, and there is a certain threshold where if you have too much, because for whatever reason you can't do anything with the data you just worked on. That's what I wanted to call out.
Okay, so when you make your loadout and you're ready to put it into game, this is one of the errors you could see. You've got to clear up a whole bunch of inventory space so that the automation has the room to move around the mods and do the job. And so that means right then you could have to go back into game or use HotUtils if that's how you prefer to do it to sort through your mods, sell off a whole bunch of stuff you don't need, do all that work right then. And then when you go to load it out, there could be a different error right here in red that says you're missing X number of mods. It could be maybe only one or two, in which case you can choose to push the loadout anyway and then go and check which characters are missing a couple mods. But what if it's a couple dozen? 30, 50, something like that. You could easily end up selling what you thought were poor mods, but your previous automation thought were usable. So that means that you'll have to potentially just run another automation, meaning you've wasted your time. So to take it back to the notion of best practices, before you start any of this automation work, go through your mods. Sell off all of the worst stuff. If you've seen my YouTube videos, the how-to mod guides 1 and 2, that does a good job of teaching you how to pick through which mods are worth keeping. That process can take time. A lot of folks also use HotUtils setup criteria to sort and sell out mods that are undesirable. Minimize that as much as possible because that way you'll have a lot less of this painful work, redoing it or having to go and delete and be really careful that you're deleting just the right number of mods so that you don't accidentally get rid of anything that you want. It's just a pain to do it on the back end. So clear out inventory space before you start any of this as a first step. All right. Now, when we were talking about how to structure this, we were going to say that, logically speaking, it sounds best to start off from building out the template for a single character, and then, you build that out over the course of your entire spec for a roster. TJ, you had a note on this. Basically, you follow up on me here, but the idea is that we'll go ahead and look at building out a couple characters, but most folks have access through their guild, through friends,
Right.
and through publicly available templates that you can search up just here on HotUtils that you don't necessarily have to start from a purely blank template. You can find a template out there to start from and start adjusting requirements to suit your needs, as opposed to just building one out and adding characters in one by one from scratch. What do you got? What do you got on that one, TJ?
I think you're 100% on it because going in and then seeing a big field of white, which will make sense when you go into the playground, which is where most of the work and what I really focus on does. I got no notes for the addition of that because coming in and seeing a whole bunch of white and no work being done can be kind of intimidating from starting out. So it's better to definitely come from the point of borrowing a template from somebody else, getting a timestamp, or taking one of the pre-built ones. Fatal has a lot of good ones out there. He's done a lot of great work. And
Yeah,
what I
shout
would
out
call
to Fatal, who made the original video set on automation with HotUtils.
this is the guy where I got it from. So everything when we talk about the plotting and scheming, I literally take my notes from what Fatal got me on, and I'm just the everyman's version. Mm-hmm. So I think you're good.
Let's get into it, TJ. Let's take us. We started from the homepage. You go to the mods, then loadouts, and now we're going to head to the playground, right?
This is my area, my place of love is the playground. All things happen within the playground.
All right. Now, how are we starting out? We have some type of template we started with here that we pulled from where? A publicly available template?
So what this is if you look to the right, you'll see reset all settings. So what's happened is the game has been updated with your data at the time. So what you're seeing is right now, if I look at Ahsoka Tano, there's a 560 speed. That's what you're going to see from most people as a base speed check. So in the game right now for Striker or whoever else is coming in, you're going to see what is on your stuff. It literally is a timestamp.
So as a starting point, it's actually populating out every character that you have. And then it's also showing what their, equipped mod speed is. So again, we're not actually having to build out pane by pane each character in this.
No.
Okay.
No, you're just starting out. This is what's in game. Yeah, this is just literally the timestamp. So it makes it nice.
Mm-hmm.
But what it doesn't have is any of the measures, weights, or anything else that we'll get into You're literally just saying, okay, so this is what we have for that time.
Yeah, it's just a snapshot of speeds, really. The
Yep.
the thing about automation that makes it so powerful is that we're going to go ahead and set some requirements that we want for characters, and then when this automation executes, it's going to look at each character in this as they're ordered from left to right,
Yes.
top down. So that's an important factor to think about before we go and actually run the automate. And we'll talk about that again when we get about there. But the idea here is that as you're building this out, this is a prioritized listing of how you want the bot to go about modding these characters. So that's something important to keep in mind. Don't necessarily arbitrarily have all your GLs at the front of this unless you need them all prioritized that highly. TJ, before we get any further with working in the playground area, let's go back to loadouts one more time, Striker. Hit create new loadout, and we're going to save a baseline for what your mods are in game. That way, no matter what we do from this point, you'd always be able to load back in exactly where you are now, and you've got yourself covered.
It's right there, Tess. HotUtils created that because of the ask. So you literally take snapshot for base right now, and if that's what you don't want to change, just click yes. It'll actually create that for you. You don't even have to do a create new loadout. Yeah,
I'm just a dinosaur, I guess. I always hit the create new loadout, old-fashioned style. But yes, this will do it.
Yeah, so you take that create snapshot. It's going to give it to you. So, for example, for me, and Task talks about it all the time, I will go between what TW is and GAC or whatever else. If you know you're going to flip back and forth within the week, take snapshots is amazing for stopping that, or something else is going to come up.
And now where does it save that? It's just saving it right there. That's it.
That's it. That red box. That red box is your live point. Yep.
Okay. As long as that works for you. Yeah, because your alternative is you can hit the create new loadout and save something new just based on whatever you have equipped. That's fine. But as long as you're covered, that's the place to start from. Okay, back to the playground. And yeah, so TJ was just saying that by hitting reset all settings, it basically takes a look at your account. Any characters it can see, it'll show. And yeah, it'll also show details about their mods here. But that's just the start of the journey. Now we have to go talk about setting requirements. Striker, you were saying that, we were saying that we were going to give you the option. You get to pick the character we'll start with. So what do you want to
do? Well, seeing as he's on everybody's wish list at the moment, let's go with Lord Vader.
Sure thing. Okay. You're going to open up the pencil box right here, DJ.
Okay.
Yep, that's where you start. Okay.
Now, personally, I like to do all of the editing work from the advanced view, but DJ, why don't you tell us a little bit about what we're seeing from this more basic view?
So what you're going to look at is currently mods on the character. So when we talked about the baseline, that's what you're seeing is in game right now for Striker. So when it talks about that base speed line you saw, this is everything that's in game. So he's done a health build with health primaries that's pushing into, at the time of the recording, CX2 just came out. We have LV, which is a primary one for threes, and health is the big thing that you're wanting to push into. And then we have the next thing, which goes into weights. This is where I would lean on things like Fatal and what they're doing. So if you go to the weights tab, it'll start showing what the priorities for characters are. So here, and this is why I love HotUtils, you can get into all of the things that TAS is as far as the nitty gritty. If we want to give more speed, more protection, more health, giving the stat breakout, we can tell HotUtils this is more of a priority versus something else. So if
yeah, now this is something that you learn by feel, by the way. Like, when you're thinking about it yourself, since you went with the full health build, you're going to probably place, health as a higher priority than protection.
Right.
Protection probably higher priority than speed, stuff like that. And as far as how much you want them to care about that, that's how much further you have those sliders along than speed, right? You have like health and protection at 90 plus, and then you have speed at 60 something like that, right? You can adjust it by feel. You don't have to work with every one of those metrics. You work with the ones that you care about. In particular, you're going to work with the weights for the stat targets that you care about on the character, which is the next thing.
what I love about this, and for the layman's man, I don't even mess with any of these. I don't mess with weights. I don't mess with stat targets. I start massaging, and I agree with Taff. I massage in advanced, and primaries and sets is where I primarily look at. But it's
Yeah.
just showing that this is how deep you can
Yeah,
get into it.
as
So
far as handling order and stuff, I think weights is something we talk about after targets, right? So my recommendation is let's go up to the top and hit the advanced button because that just gives us a different view on this. I like it. The interface feels more in control. Just a different take, right? Now, required stat targets that you can see here. Yep, that's the one. That's where we're cooking. We're going to add
this
targets.
is where I spend all my time. So if we're
Yes, this
talking
is where
about
TJ
everything
is a
I'm
real
doing,
master of setting up
yeah,
stuff. Because he'll do this. The guild will give him targets of what they want on
right.
key characters, and it's his job to translate that into requirements. So TJ, take it from here. Let's Striker's gonna tell you, I think, about what he sees as the minimum requirements, and then you show him how you'd set that up. Does that
Okay.
sound fair?
Well,
I think it
I
works
guess
perfect.
that's kind of, I think that's the biggest issue that most of us have
Mhm.
is that
Mhm.
we have no idea what we know. Okay, I knew, or I had been informed that Lord Vader required a health build. Okay,
Mhm.
I have no idea what a good target would be for that health build.
Okay.
I have no
So
idea.
I'm going to correct your assumption that you want to look at. And for all of us layman folks that don't have the task next level of modding, right? We're just the average Joe with, we'll call it an okay build of health. It really takes a knowledge of in game, right? So what I can do and what I'll do as a point of reference, just starting here, fresh off the boat, is I'll go look at like a Tassanex because Tass is so methodical with his approach towards modding. I'll go look at people like Aesop, and I'm giving names like Aesop Rock. I'll look at him as well. I pick people in game that I think have a great understanding of modding, and then I take and look at their builds. I look at what's going on in game. They don't give me any numbers. I don't go talk to Tassanex or Aesop. I just look at what they're doing with their mod roster, and then I compare that to my own. If the point I'm looking at yours, and we're talking about Lord Vader in a health, I'm going to look for a number that my mods can hit. For example, if Tassinex's Lord Vader, who's doing the same health build you're doing, can hit again high number 380,000 just health. I'm going to look at his numbers and how it's built,
It's
speed
not going to
checks or
be
anything
like
else.
that. Like here, in
It's just a
brief,
high number.
in brief, the idea is Striker. You do have to feed some basic requirements. Now you could do that
Yes,
from you can operate from the idea. You can have them in speed mods. You can have them in pure
yep.
health mods,
I'll
like
get
you
to
have
that.
them right now.
Yep, I'll
There's
get to that too.
viable different builds for Lord Vader, but you have to have some idea of what you'd like to
Correct.
see as a starting point. And you can, like TJ suggested, pull up mine or pull up somebody else that
Right.
trust how they have them set up, and take a look at the stats, and this is where we can talk about minimums and adjust them down. So I'm just going to take over from my screen real quick and show my Lord Vader, just as an example.
I think that's perfect because it'll give me a
Because
point of reference to help with.
Sure, because the idea is I can look at this and say, okay, I don't have mods that are going to have him able to hit this health with this speed and this offense. So what am I thinking? I can maybe hit, instead of 191,000 with all health something, maybe 180. And then for 163,000 protection, that's maybe too much.
Right.
Let's try something like 150. And instead of 570 speed, something like 550. And instead of
Right.
11.5 offense, something like 10,000. You start low, and then you can kind of tweak here. And that's part of the exercise of getting your own customized, personalized template. Is you're going to have to start inputting some minimums for whatever your goal build is for the character. It will automate based on requirements you feed it. It's not able to determine for you what are good requirements to start from or shoot for.
So I'll
Alright.
tell you what I do for me as a point of reference. So I didn't get to see that because I know you were sharing it. So what I do in game is look at the builds and then I go to my character and start putting on mods to try to match the numbers. That's how I massage my recs for my personal builds. So anytime I'm looking at something and I'm going to find the comparison, if it's a full health set that you're doing, I'm going to go look at what are my best ones, and then I take the numbers from that. That's how I personally start with any character. But if you click new, here is where all of it begins. So depending on what we're looking at, if you're telling me it's a health build, I'll get into the other pieces. But here, if you click stat on the left side,
The drop key.
yep. So you see all of the different options that we can choose from for each spec, depending on how far we want to define. If we want to look at just simple health, but we can also look at, I'll get to total mod health already. We can also look at total health. So say Striker, you want to hit 350,000 total health. That's health and protection. Give me my number. I don't care. Or I can say I want to hit 350,000 total health, but I want a minimum health check of say 190. It'll look to hit both of those numbers if they're both in what I'll call the required section. Good so far?
Yep. Okay. Makes sense.
All right. All of these pieces work like that on every character we're doing. And if you look, you can go down and see we have total health, speed, physical critical chance, special critical chance. You have resistance. So if we have just straight defense, right? How much defense do we want in there? If we want to add critical avoidance, it's going to look for all of those pieces. Here also, as a good note of reference, go to the very bottom, total mod rarity, 5 or 6 per mod. For your pilots and for your crews. So most pilots, we want to make sure we have 6 dot mods on every set, right? So we want to look for that. If you put that, you can use total mod rarity for those pilots. And if you click that and then put in a min of 36, it'll make sure if that's all you give it, that every mod on your pilot is a 6 dot mod. So it's just a good thing I learned from it from other people, but there's also a check for pilot. But either way, makes it nice, makes it easy. Here, if you're in what I call the required stat section, you are telling HotUtils you must hit this number. And there's a reason I say that. If you can't hit this, so let's say we've talked about priority and you've given it a number that your mods can't hit, when we do the automate, it'll actually fail that character and you'll get a red box, and we'll talk about that as well. I just wanted to call it out.
We've got a ways
the reason
to
I
go.
bring up the reason I bring up required is because in this section, which makes it nice, I can also give it what's called a desired. So if you were to say, let's say if you want, go ahead and put the number, what is it, 190,000 health. So just in the min section, go ahead and put 190K. So right now we're telling the system, you need to hit 190. So it's not telling it needs to be a health mod. It's not telling it needs to be on an arrow. It's just saying, this is my number. This is my baseline.
Right.
Now, let's say you can't hit that, but later on, if you see the 2 arrows that are to the left, so you'll see looks like 2 papers and then next to the 2 arrows. If you can click that, if you go down below, so you actually be able to go down.
No,
or
I think you had it moved over to desired, right? So he just needs to go to the next
that's what I want to show
over.
as desired, because that's the next one.
Next tab then.
Desired. Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. I'm mobile. I do my stuff on mobile. So if you can click desired stat target.
Yeah, so that moved your health requirement from required to desired. So
right.
So just to take us back over there to you can go ahead and click the double arrows now to move it back over to required targets. But the idea is, so you can start from looking at somebody else and basing it like we talked about a minute ago, or you can yourself, knowing what you want to do, throw on mods that maybe aren't what you think are the perfect mods, but I want to throw on health sets and see what he looks like. Turns out mine's able to comfortably hit only 180K. Okay, fine. Then for the purposes of automation, give yourself a little breathing room and give yourself, 90% of what you feel you can easily hit as the requirement target. And then you can always add more on top of it in the desired section. You know what I'm saying? To TJ's point, if you want to make your required targets reasonable. You can get strict in the desired because there's a setting when you go to automate that will tell it to make sure that it prioritizes. After you hit the required targets, do go back and make sure that we hit these desired ones as well. You can tell it to do that. But if you set the required targets super high, you're going to end up failing because unless you have really insane roster depth, you're not going to be able to hit what you see as like ideal spec as a required minimum for every character on your roster. So this is part of developing judgment that might take you a couple automates to get the hang of, but the idea is we set something that is reasonable here, and if we don't, we'll have a whole bunch of fails, and then you have to do a whole bunch of adjustment after that. So the 190,000, I think, what did you have on your character currently? I think I had something like that, but maybe you don't need to set it that high. Maybe it could be 180 for you. You know what I'm saying? Or do
You
you
should be able to
want
go
to
back
have
and
it
look
that
at
high?
mods. So it's not going to go anywhere, but if you go back to your character, you can go to mods, and on that character, it'll show what you have as far as what the numbers and the stats are. So yeah, you want to go.
Just click the icon of him up there, I think, the
It
face.
should be able to work that way. It's
or it's the back
can-
arrow to back out of this.
It's probably the back arrow.
We can discard. We didn't save anything. That's fine.
It's not going to do anything to you.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, so we can see
Right,
that he
so
was clicking
if you click click him or click the pencil. Mhm.
That's the inspection.
And then here's what you currently have today. So right now you have 210 with the speed of 510. So completely health build, no speed whatsoever. I don't like that setup, but again, that's the idea, right? I can look at what you're doing, saying 210. All right, so I want to make mine faster. So I could start moving and massaging the numbers. So let's say 210 is your cap. You're fully healthed out. Let's say I want to hit a reasonable number of, I don't care, let's drop 30,000. So maybe a 180 or a 190, but I want to hit a speed of like 570. So I'm going to give it that additional requirement. That's where the advanced tab can work with that.
Yeah, so let's go back to advanced up there at the top and to our required stat target and set a new requirement for health. Say 190,000 like that. You're easily able to hit 210. And what, any of these other functions that we need to check off. Let me kill my camera so it's not blocking the page. DJ?
What?
I would give it additional. I would want to put in there. And there compare is turn order basis. So a lot of the things we're trying to do, if you're looking at a compare, that's usually when you're you have a specific speed target is how I primarily use that.
Okay.
So when that, but we're getting into a lot of the nitty gritty, what I would call bar. Yeah, so that's what you're doing when we're talking about compares, and you would do it. That's why this box opens up. We check what we're wanting to do. We can round up. I can also put maximum. So let's say I want Lord Vader to be the weakest character on the team. I can drop his numbers from the compare section of saying, go look at this other character. And the nice thing about it, I can continue to compare depending on who we're working with.
So yeah, if you're working with a team like you're trying to manipulate who gets VIP from Sortie, you can use this. And it depends. Now, think about this. This is intuitive. If you're going to build out character requirements that depend on the specs of another character, be careful that character that you are basing this second character on is coming ahead in the automation. You want that character to be done getting looked at before the character after it is looking back to base its own spec. You see? So just be careful of that if you're going to use that feature.
Priority does matter, right? Because what will end up happening, you'll see when you're doing the automation, that if one character will fail that you're doing a comparison to, it'll fail both because they can't meet the check. where you're doing it.
And
So
that's
to Tass's
intuitive as
point, we're
well,
talking about
right?
variety.
Like if you set them
Yeah.
in the wrong order, you have character B based on character A, but character A doesn't get to be modded until character B is modded first. It's not going to make
Right.
sense, right?
So in other words, so in game you want Bo-Katan Mandalore to be 1 speed slower.
You got it.
Than your Beskar Armor Mando, because you want him to go into birds. Then you want BKM to go do her mass assist, and then you have automatic birds. So I could, in this functionality, I can set that to be bam, I don't know, target speed of 280, BKM would then be 279. But
You can give it both numbers. So you can with the
Yeah,
required
but-
section,
But let him finish with
can
the
do both.
yes.
when I'm doing my automation,
Mhm.
I have to tell it how fast BAM is going before it can be 1 less than BAM. So BKM would have to be second in the automation, if that makes sense.
BKM would at least have to come after BAM in your automation sequence. Yes.
But you can give it a threshold or so you can do two things with it. We can say, sure, I want a minimum 1 slow, but I still want him to be a minimum of this speed. Or you can give it no spec on an actual number and just use the compare and say, I want them to be within 5 speed, nothing more, nothing less. It'll look to hit that exact speed check, if that makes sense. So you don't have to necessarily give it a minimum requirement for the secondary character, not the primary. And it'll go for that threshold of keeping that.
Okay.
I mean, we can look at like a character like BKM in a minute. Let's finish up Lord Vader though, to your point. So how would we finish out this health spec here? Do we have to save this along the way, or do we just get to hit new, TJ, and add the next requirement?
So you don't have to continue to save. It's basically keeping track of what you're doing. But as you saw, if you leave the screen, anything you've done won't save.
It'll prompt
so
you.
clicking new is good.
It'll prompt you.
You got it. Right. So it's like from here, we want to give it now. Again, I think you need to be much faster than 510. So I would say like a 570 is an okay number to start with.
That's a
now,
strong
to
number.
your point,
Fine. Yeah.
And that's I think where we're at with the end, right? So the thing I would do here though, because you like the 210, I would give it a desired stat target of 210. So I would go into the desired stat target section, and then I would add the 210 health. If we think 570 is your great base number, then we would leave it. But if you ever wanted to try to get faster, giving it a desired number is never a bad thing. It's just going to tell the system, you must hit this. And hey, if we got some extra, go hit this. And
but
it's going to look in order of
for not
priority.
being able to hit a desired target. It
You
won't
got
fail
it.
your check
You got it.
ever.
You can give 1 million desired unless you're telling it that desired to treat it, and we'll talk about it later. It's just going to check it out, and if it can, cool. If it can't, move on.
Okay.
Sure.
As you're getting in further, so
that was
a
word of caution to the novice spec writer. Each one of these is a check that you're going to ask the automation to do, and each one of these should feel like it matters. So I'm not saying like this speed check for Lord Vader for desired is bad or is wasted. What I'm saying is make sure that these are things that you actually want to go for, because you're going to increase the runtime, the operation time of this. And by the way, running HotUtils is device dependent. So I know folks, TJ can tell you the horror stories. I myself have tried to run the automation off my phone just once, and it took 4+ hours to do just one run of it. Compared to running it off my desktop computer, it's 30 minutes or less most of the time. So
it's also it requires a lot. HotUtils to do this requires a lot of juice to test the point. And I am completely mobile when I do my stuff. I do it off of an iPad. I'll do it off my phone. So it's like, yes, I am the time delay guy where it's like I'm not gonna sit here in front of my computer. I'm gonna let you run. You can run all night if you want, but just be aware, the heavier the load, the longer the time.
All right. So we've got this health in here. We got speed. Do we have any other required targets that we want to put in? Striker, anything that you think is critical?
Well, his damage is quite nice, isn't it? But I don't know off the top of my head what a good
So
target
you could
would be.
say
Yeah,
this
I
as you
think I
want, but
think
here's
you
where I'm
can
going to tell
accident
you.
your way into 10,000, but to that point, do you need to put a requirement to accident your way into 10,000?
I don't know.
I don't think you
When I
do,
said
but
I was
if you want to set it, that's fine. If you want to set it, that's fine. I'm saying like yeah, we can go ahead and do it. Physical damage?
okay. So that would be physical
Yes,
damage,
sir.
Correct.
min 10,000,
Sure.
and it's a nice to have. So if it can get it, then great. If not,
Okay, you have it in the desired section. That's fine.
mm-hmm.
Okay, so we've got that. Now up at the top, the check mark next to the Lord Vader portrait icon. That's how we save these changes. Okay, and
The only
then
other
we can.
section
Hmm?
I want to get to real quick for this is with this section where I agree with Tass. I do a lot of advanced, but if you want to make your life easier too, can you go and click the box next to it as far as primaries?
Yeah.
Since we're looking at this, I want to make sure I call this out. So
Yeah,
here,
and sets. Yeah. No, please do. This is important to look at.
this is the part I want to make sure for everybody. If I'm giving it 190,000 health, but I want to make sure that, let's say my circle is a protection mod, regardless of stat, here is where you can tell it. So like if you don't know, let's say the crit damage of a certain character, but I know I want a crit damage triangle, here is where we can tell the system what specific triangle we want. So if you click crit damage triangle, what this is telling the system to put everything into perspective is I want you to hit 190,000 health minimum. I want you to hit 570 speed minimum. Again, that's required. But you must use a protection circle. You must use a health cross. You must use a crit, so on and so forth. So that also adds time to the modding ask for the automation. But just be aware, you can come here, and if you're not sure of a number or a spec, but I know I want to have this this triangle, this is where you'll do it. I would not put that here now because I do not see how you're going to hit that number trying to tell the system protection health crit damage. Just wanted to show you. So if you can remove that for me.
Yeah, you can
And
uncheck
then
all that stuff. But so
yeah,
there's how you would filter on the protection. Sorry, the primaries that you want the automation to consider, and then go to sets
now
here.
please, this is the next one. So here is where this is great if we're talking about the sets of a mod. So if I don't care what number you hit or what mod you use, advanced is great. But for someone such as like a Tassinix or somebody else, he may be methodical saying, we can hit my numbers, but let's say I only want you to use one health set, right? So these sessions are what that's going to look at. So when we're talking about, if I don't care about a set, 9 times out of 10 I don't. But let's say I want to use a speed set. No outside sets is basically saying you may only use this, don't put anything else on it. So it's going to literally, so if I was to click the speed set, it would tell the system you have to hit 190,000 health only using speed sets. So I would definitely not click that, but just as an example. Must use all. Must use all is basically saying if I click that and I click speed set one time, you'll see a dot go under it. What that is saying is you have to use a speed set whenever you're clicking on it. So, but if you unclick that for me, go click health. So you see the dot. So what this is telling it when we say must use all, and it has right 2 and then 3 because you can use two health set mods to make one set. And that's what that's saying. So must use all right now. What you would be telling the system is you have to find me 6 health mods to load out this character. So these modding requirement sets are if you want to spec, let's say you've heard Tass and us talk about like, I need them to hit a crit chance of like 60% and the character has a low amount. So we know we need at least one crit chance set. That's where you can come in and tell the system to look for those specific mod types.
Yeah.
So right now, if we were to use this, you're telling the system, you can go ahead and hit the 190,000 health and the 570 speed, which in my opinion might be tough with no speed sets. But you're telling it that you must use all health only.
Yeah, that is what it's saying.
So
Now you'll see
if
that
I do that and that, I'm telling
But-
it must use a speed set which would be
with
4
a 2-piece of health.
Right.
Yeah.
with a 2-piece
Yes.
of health. Okay.
Yep. But you don't have to do this.
Right.
That's why I know Task talks about it, and I like advanced, because if I don't give it a requirement on a set, also you can make it to where it does not allow broken sets, or it makes to where you can, I don't like messing with this if I don't need to. I like keeping in the requirements
Right.
area.
Like any elegant programming, the more that you can get your goal with as setting as few instructions as
Right.
possible is best.
Right.
So you don't have, if you set specs that, like, for example, they're not going to hit no 190,000 health, 200, 200, or in your case, 210,000 plus health in just a speed set, right? We don't have to tell it to just consider only
No.
speed. It's not going to do that. Now, if you want it to hit 570 as a requirement, it will consider speed because it's going to have to. So you don't have to
Right.
tell it. But if it's so important to you that it's on certain sets, you can specify, and then you can see that the default is use global setting. That's just saying it's not specifying either of the other two after it. You're not specifying that you're forbidding the character to have broken sets, or that you're explicitly permitting it. You can just, have no statement on that.
Yeah, I
Anything
would
else you
remove
want
them
to
here.
cover here?
For the
Sorry.
purpose of what you're doing, there's no need for it. Yeah, so you can remove it. I just wanted to call these out. That if you don't want to mess with the advanced, but it's like, I know I want to have this, you can always go to these primaries and these sets to give it an easier access.
Okay. What about requirements here, squad? Anything he needs to see here? I don't use these myself.
I don't. All right. So to be fair to our bias, we're more end game, so I don't ever use them as well. I usually stick to advanced or required, desired, and again, I'm mobile, so it's done a different. It looks differently on the mobile. Primaries and sets. I don't mess with the other pieces. I don't need to really, because that'll do all the work for me. And again, to Taz's point, the less you give it, the better it will do. The more you give it, it's going to keep and go as refined as you make it.
Yeah, it will agonize over it and bog down and take time.
Yes.
Anyway.
Yes.
So we've I think we didn't want to save any of our last changes, right? So we can just hit the back arrow up at the top, and when it asks us if we want to save it, we can say no. We already saved your specs that you.
Do you want to discard? Yes.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, my bad. Yeah, we do want it.
Okay. And his little pencil's now changed into a red.
Right. So this is something that right now you're not meeting your required stat targets, which makes sense, right? You're not 570 for sure. That's consistent with what we just did, and the reason why you don't have red or green. Red is fail, green is pass, and yellow is you're just barely passing, which we might see after an automation. But as you go and fill out specs for each character, those colors on those pencils are going to change depending on how well you're already meeting the target. So this is where you, the fanatic about using this automation feature, can go wild with taking your time, setting all the required desired targets for each character all the way down. Now,
the only thing I'm gonna correct pass on.
Mhm.
The only time you'll see a yellow is if you have a desired target. If you only have required, it's green red. That's it.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
yeah, I just want to correct.
So
It
what does
doesn't mean you
yellow
barely
mean,
pass.
though? That you pass it or that you
Yellow
fail?
means you hit the required. You hit that's basically like a yellow light. It's like you hit
the
exactly
required,
what
but
you
not
gave
the
us.
desired.
You got it. That's what it means. Is if I give him one desired and it hits that, it'll go green. Green means you've passed everything that you're giving, including desired. Yellow means if let's say I gave it 3 desired and I only hit 2 of the 3, it's going to go yellow. It's going to say, here you go. And then you can go into the character and it'll show where the actual colors will align. So if you were to say, let's say it's red, click on the pencil for me right now, or the character. Either one is fine. But this is what it's telling you. We told the system, you need to hit 190 as a required and 210 as the desired. Key green means he hit the included desired requirement, but we missed the required speed check. Now, if he was 190 and he hit 570, you would see a yellow and it's saying, yeah, we got the 190, but the 210 was out. We couldn't hit that to hit the required setup. So just calling it out. Only time you see yellow is because you've given it a desired stat.
All right.
Okay.
Well, good. So we've shown how we did a character. Do we want to knock out a second character here real quick and let Stryker take the reins? You got a sense of, how to move in those menus. Ask us anything, but you want to pick another character and set them up. You can ask me. I'll pull up on we got GG or whatever a character as a reference if you need. But if you have an idea of what you want to input for something, we can just go with that.
Okay. Well, let's go. How about we do the Lord Vader 3v3 squad at the moment? Because I understand that there is a preference as to which of your clones goes first.
Mm-hmm.
And then that would also allow you to show me how to use the turn order sort of stipulation in the tool.
So the first thing is we I can just tell you, and you would be able to look this up just looking up people's characters or whatever, but we want CX2 faster than Oppo, so we'll click and drag the CX2 pane here, one left of Oppo. Now when we go and set his requirements, so go ahead and hit the pencil icon, we'll bring him up, and then we'll get into that advanced view. All right, and then we'll go over to required stat targets. So, yeah, this is CX2. I would say for speed, like top of Kyber 1, the very fastest ones are 340 plus. So say 330 plus, 320 plus. What do you think?
Let's go 330 for now.
Okay, so 330 minimum speed. Now, Oppo's speed is going to be based on CX2, so we don't need to put any compare operator here. As far as health goes, you have him at, I'm sorry, is he Relic 9 or what?
Yes, he's Relic 9.
Easy to say that as a health target, have 100,000 plus health. There's another required target. I think as a required, yeah, because it's not just the speed. I need him to be healthy. I don't want this to be done with a bunch of random ass primaries. And it's easy to be 110, 120,000. So 100,000 is a very reasonably attainable target. Now, we could get more strict over here in desired and say desired 340. Health of 110 would be desired. Make sure you're changing the stat type there. You got to set.
Oh, what? I can't have 110.
No, you can't have 110,000 speed, Stryker.
Oh, but Dad.
All right. I don't think we need to specify primaries or sets. I think the nature of our requirements will take care of that for the most part. But if you ever wanted to, you know where to go. Setting your primaries or set types. Now we can hit the save, the check mark.
Yeah.
And now, instead of backing out of this view, yes, we can use those left and right toggles, hit right, and then we go directly into Oppo. Now, let's click back over to required stat targets because you're in desired right now.
New one.
As far as speed, this is where TJ can come in with the compare operator. So I assume we're hitting that menu. We're pulling up CX2 here. Our comparator. Go.
Okay.
Stats.
So there's two ways to do this, and I want to call out where I am a simple man when I do my comparisons or whatever else I'm doing when it comes in. Dennis is really good at it. I know some other folks. I know Fatal's gonna be phenomenal at this. You can use the same stat with the left operand, right operand. I am not good with that. So I just want to call this out. I call my flaws where I see them. I try to make this as simple. You are telling the system to look at Oppo speed as compared to CX2. If you want to say you want him at least one slower, you can go to max, type in -1, and what you'll see is what it does up top. So if the idea is he needs to be at least one speed slower, you can type in -1.
But is that going to work right there? Because that's not in comparison to CX2, right?
It is telling it's
Oh, it
telling
is
Apple
right now
speed.
because we added
Yep,
the CX2 in there.
you
Now,
got it.
it's not that it's a
saying that.
separate lower section. It's part of the whole calculation now.
Right.
Okay.
Now, if you want to give him a minimum speed,
I see
let's
it.
say you have 330. I want to have Oppo at a minimum of 320. Okay.
Yeah.
Go do new for me. Do new. So click the new button again. This is a requirement. Give him 320.
As it so now why explain why you broke that out as a separate requirement instead of typing 320 in the minimum field in the same spot above.
You can do. I don't want to mess with it. I am very methodical in my approach because it's going to go off your priorities. You can mess with it, but it's like I don't like that. So again, you can.
Okay,
So
well,
Yeah, so it shows how it makes both checks. All right.
yes, and you're
Yeah.
basically you're creating the calculation. I'm not a fan of doing it this way. I like keeping it clean, but again, you can do it how you want.
Yeah, I like
And
it
there is
separated the way you did it too. That's fine.
But the idea is, and just for everybody, like everything else, it's all priority. We are telling the system the number one required check is the turn order or speed check between Appo and CX2. The second requirement, again, requirement, is to hit 320.
But it
You
does
must
mean to
hit
the
these.
bot, it does mean that it is going to hit both, right? It isn't going to
Yes.
execute this first one
Yes.
and then possibly undo it by
No.
executing the second. It will
No, you
still
must
meet
hit both. As long as you're in the required
Right.
stat, it must do this. It's just again,
Okay.
I like it clean like this. I'll do 15 boxes. I don't care. But you can do all of these things. That's why the tool is so great.
Okay. So we got the speed there figured out. As far as Oppo offense, you could say you could add a required target of 10,000 physical, right?
It would definitely want to do him requires that, and then also we come into question of where I would also do just a primary for him. So you definitely want to hit a physical damage.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would assume yours is Relic 9 on this one too, Striker?
Yes, it is.
You should be fine. Yeah, you should be fine with the 10,000.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and then the other question would be, if we're giving it a number, do you want it to have a crit damage triangle? And you can go two ways. If you know the character's base stat, you can just say, here, I think it's like 196 or whatever it's going to be. Or you can just tell it.
Yeah, I would just
crit
do
damage
that.
triangle. So that's the idea, though, right? And why this makes it so easy is you don't have to figure out what the actual crit damage amount is. You can just say, give it the triangle, we're good to go.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got that saved. Now we hit save up there at the top. A check mark. Yep. And then now we can back out from here and look at the more general template where we're at. So you can see that all these characters to the left of CX2 and then above this row would be getting automated ahead. The only now you're saying, how much does that matter? It only matters where you're constrained on certain set types. So let's just say that the first 10 or so characters happen to be disproportionately demanding on your very fast offense sets. By the time you get to Oppo, if the automation determined that they wanted to use, based on your mods, that offense was the way to do it, and then it doesn't have it, it's going to fail you, not because you don't have the mods, but because the mods are already assigned. So that's why by feel, I think is the best way to do it. Move characters around like I would intuitively think right now, just looking at your screen. I know that CX2 and Oppo are more important to me to have in the box for whatever my spec is than Wrecker Mercenary. Maybe comparable to Rey Darkside Vision because she's part of a GL team. But you see what I'm saying? Like I would move these characters around so that lower priority characters come later in the automation. So what we've done here is we built out requirements for Lord Vader, CX2, and Oppo. Now, of course, Stryker can spend a whole bunch of his own time building out how he wants to have this, and then he could run an automation. But, in the interest of time, TJ was kind enough to share over to Stryker a completed template that we can use just to show how automation works. However, we don't have to waste what you've done here today, Stryker. You can go up to File, up at the top, and save this, and it will be in your loadout name. We can name this whatever you like. That's fine. Sounds good. Now use all characters in loadout. It'll include every character you can see. You don't have to fill out these other fields. There is one thing I want you to see. See where it says that toggle push to game? Don't ever check that, because the mods that we just looked at right now, changing the specs that we just changed, it'll attempt to push what we've just been working on directly into game when you do that as soon as you hit the save button. So never hit that particular toggle, in my opinion. It would always be preferable, if you want to load a loadout, just go to the loadouts thing, hit load, have control over the process, don't feel like you accidented your way into it. Anyway, now you can just hit save. And it will be in your loadouts. I don't know if it's right there, but it should.
Yeah, it won't take them anywhere. So that's just taking.
So just go to loadouts and you'll see it there. Yeah.
Right.
So there it is. And now, you've got that side by side with your base loadout, which, you can still see says it's active. So you're protected there. Where is the thing that TJ sent you? How's he going to access that from you?
Back in Playground. That's why I told you. This is where we do all of the good stuff. Okay. And then, so what you're going to do is up top, you're going to go to template and then import. So here you can see, we can get definitions. We can import a template. You can, like how I did it. I exported my definition to him.
And for the folks at home, you might not have TJ's template, but there's a whole bunch of publicly accessible templates available when you come up to template, import, loadout definitions. If you could scroll back up, Stryker, at the top there were tags. You see filters that could be checked off, 5 verse 5, 3 verse 3. So, you, the user, can come in here and look and find what you're trying to get as far as a basic template to work from. So, sorry, TJ, you can go back from here. I just wanted to point that out for just the.
No, I think it's great. It is a call out that we can do. Like, I didn't give it a name, but if I wanted to give it the description, if I wanted to give it what it is, the categories, right? That's what that's going towards. So it's a good call out.
Okay. Right, well, so anyway, let's get into your template. Yeah. So we hit that open loadout. Yeah, I always like the way you just did that here. Hit that ellipsis and then hit open loadout from here when you're loading in a template from this view. Okay. Now, just like what we were talking about earlier, this is TJ's template that he's gone in and added requirements to all these characters. So we're seeing here that, you're immediately we see just by default, there's a few of your characters that are not hitting those targets. You can see that your Magma Trooper is exactly what TJ was talking about, where there is a minimum target and a desired, and you're meeting the minimum but failing the desired. That's what that means. So just at a glance, you could scroll up and down this page and see where your characters are fitting as an initial point. Although, surprise, surprise, we'll expect to see mostly fails because we haven't done anything yet.
Oh, my Jar Jar's okay though. It's fine.
There you go,
my man. So when we're done scrolling here, we can go back up to the top, and then TJ can tell us how to get set up for our first automation run.
Okay.
So the one thing you'll see, and just calling out the basis is, if you're needing to add characters, again, on mobile, you may have to add them. This is my 5s template. So at the time of the recording when we did it, what we didn't have at the time was Jocasta Nu. We didn't really have Appo. We didn't really have CX2. So you're going to come down and see them at the bottom. If you don't see them, if you look at the top, you'll see the word add. If you click the dots next to it, what you'll basically be doing is any character you're not seeing in your unit locker. So you see add visible or add all. Clicking add all, anybody you don't see that you know should be there would be added to the screen. So a lot of times I have to do that when I'm going between my 3s or my 5s. If we don't see them, go to add all, and then they'll pop up for you at the bottom of the screen. So,
Okay.
reason I bring this up is you're probably going to want to mod your Apple, your CX2, and then like a Jocasta New, if you have a number you want to hit for that spec. So you'll want to have to drag them to the top. You're going to want to make them obviously a priority. So you want to have them closer to the top left corner, depending on where the priority is and how stringent you want to make the mod rec. But that's just calling it out. You want to make sure you get them pulled up and over, and it'll make more sense why.
As a minor note, whenever you are using somebody else's template, it behooves you to go ahead and reorder the characters in the way that you see them being priority. So that is a fair point. Appreciate that, TJ. Now you don't really have to do all that right now, Striker, because none of this is something that you're meaning to keep. But we're showing people how you go about it, right? So you built out a template, you save it as a loadout. You know, from the loadouts page, there's the edit button, which brings you here into the playground with that loadout. And now I think we're about ready to set up an automation, right, TJ?
Yes, but the only thing I want to call out before we're doing the automation is if you have a character you love, right? And I know Strecker talked about it with his sisters. Funny, I said that his sisters. If you have characters that have mods on it, and you know what, you love them just the way they are, they're your creme de la creme. It's like I don't care. I don't want the system to go look it back out of here for me. You can do it here, but just to make it easy, back out of this screen for me. The lock screen. So that lock, if you click it, what's going to happen is it's going to bypass the character and the mods when it does the automation.
Yeah, they will be excluded from consideration.
Right.
Those mods will
so
not.
I know
be
you
moved.
said you have your right. So I know you said you have your nice sister strikers, one that you don't want to mess with. You want it just how it is. If you lock those characters, you can put it here. You can put it later. It's not going to care.
Yeah. If I can find it, is there a way of
so here's the easier way to do it. Yes, there is. At the top, you have a search function. So if you don't want to scroll down, if you click on that, here you can go find your pilots. Here you can go find a name of a character. It also breaks down by faction. The HotUtils did a great job of making this ability. You don't even need to type the full name. You can type MER and it'll find every character with MER. So if you said right there, two options, lock unit mods, that's saying, no, I love this character, or storage locker unit, you can make them, what we talked about it before, just an empty place to put your mods.
For our purpose, what we're saying is use lock unit mods. Yeah. Now,
yes, for this character.
A note on that. I would not, just as we were saying, don't go adding requirements willy-nilly. I would not say go and check off characters, you know, willy-nilly. Like, if it's really important to you that certain characters maintain exactly the set that they're in, okay, fine, check them off. But the more you tie the automation's hands, the more probable and the more numerous your failures will be from the automation.
Yes, it's like for me specifically, I have one I always go off of is Ray, because obviously we already know she's the defensive tool. So I got her just the way I like her. I'll let it try to run sometimes, but most times I have her locked up. I won't let them touch those mods because it's got it to where I want it.
Okay. So it's now not.
Anything else we need to look at before we get set up for the automation team?
I don't think so. I think, like I said, I just want to call that out because the lock mod thing, people do have it. Like Tash, you have your gas, you have a couple. It's like, I want to make sure that if you have them the way you want them, let's not mess with that.
Sure.
All right. Okay. So now we go in. We're going to do the automation.
Wait, hang on. Is there a lot of feedback, audio feedback? I'm hearing myself. I'm hearing TJ twice.
I don't hear any audio feedback myself.
Yes, I'm hearing it.
I don't know what to say. I don't think I'm hearing it.
TJ?
Yep, I hear it when it happens right now. It just started doing it.
Yeah, I'm still not hearing it. Hopefully, Yeah, it's not picking up for me, so hopefully it stays that way, at least for the purposes of the recording.
Okay.
Regardless, let's move into the automate. Would you click the automate button, please? So this is where you're setting up all of your configuration. What are the rules for how this automation goes? What are the requirements? How often do you want it to do? Which checks? A whole bunch of stuff to check off here. I'll take command of the screen here just to show a sample that you might run. This also covers all the options, so we'll explain that. Back in Strikers View, you can hit this all options button to expand out this full list. But prompt setting every automation run, yes, I do want it to ask me about the settings every time. It will remember the settings that you used last time, so you don't have to go and redo this every single iteration. But yeah, I still want it to ask me. Don't break mod sets? No, nothing's sacred here. The whole point of using automation is let it break up whatever it needs to help us meet these targets. Limit searches within stat targets. This is just kind of a standard number. Some people use a different number than this, but the minimum compares that I put in is 200,000. Now, this next toggle, try to use existing sets if it meets stat requirements. I don't like this because you don't need it to really make this added check. You've got enough in place with your required and desired targets. This seems silly for it to see, can you use this existing set? Forget about it. That's not what's important here. Simulate mods is 6E. I don't want a simulation. I want it to automate with the mods I have. Tell me what I'm working with, not what I might be working with. This next option, favor speed arrows. I'm not exactly 100% certain on the meaning of this one, but I believe it means that as opposed to using a non-speed primary that might otherwise be able to satisfy your targets, you would choose to take a speed arrow instead. Smooth speed on required targets, that's a very advanced feature. I don't use it. I forget what it's for, but you're only really worried about it if you're, I think, using the favor speed arrows. Auto reorder on failed target means you want that turned on, and then you want because you want it to. What this means is that if along the way during automation it fails a target, it's going to reorder it so that it can try and take a swing at it again later and try to meet the targets. It's going to run through every other target and push this up further so it can try and meet it. What you're telling it with this next drop key is where to stop considering for reorder. For my purpose, for any of the templates that I've ever run, I choose the last character in the template, right? I want it to run the full length, consider, and be willing to reorder any character I have in here. Just stop at the last one in the list. And I always drag Ugnaught to be the very bottom of it. I'm never seriously using Ugnaught, so it's no skin off my back to do it that way. Now, treat desired as required, this next setting, is insane, and I would never use this because it's exactly what it sounds like. Everything becomes a required target. Why would you do that to yourself? It's just asking for a lot of failures. Next one, attempt desired targets for all units, but don't reorder. I don't think we need to do that. I think the job that it's already going to do of hitting the required targets first and then making another pass to try and fill in, as many desired requirements as possible. Let the automation do its job. All right. Using derived requirements, TJ, I don't know if you can explain that one. I don't know exactly what that one means. I've had that on by default forever.
It's just telling you basically you're gonna look for the requirements. It's how I've always understood it. I know Fatal gave out a pretty good understanding of the breakdown of it, but I always have given it to use derived requirements.
All right. Well, uncapped reorder means that it isn't going to stop reordering characters as long as it can meaningfully do so to try and meet requirements. So I want it to do that. We're doing automation to let it do this type of work, so that's fine. Exit after unit failure. If you toggle this on, the second that you fail to meet a required target, it's going to stop the automation entirely. I wouldn't want that. All right, max reorder per unit. I have set to 300. I think this is just kind of like an arbitrary number I was given back in the day that's just been a good control that I've always used. Nothing strong to say about it either way. Next one, only use locker/unequipped mods on a single automate. I think that's just a default toggle on. Only fill locker units, minimize mod swapping. Yeah, if I have designated locker units, then it'll fill them. Otherwise, it's not going to try. And then don't prompt locker unit. I don't really use locker units, so I don't even know. I'm assuming it's not going to check them.
Just for clarity, the locker units are characters that we're never going to use, and we're just using them to put mods
it's character, right? That's literally storing mods.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I hear you. So this is just a bit on these settings. I don't know if you're following from your view looking at this as I'm streaming it in Discord here, Striker, but if you've checked any of this off along the way, have you done any of that?
I believe I did what you were telling me to do.
Okay, great. Fantastic. Here, let me put your screen back up then.
So before we do this real quick, there's one thing I want to say.
Sure.
So you don't always have to do a full automation. So we can save the stats if we wanted this, but there's one thing I wanted to call out. So we'll come back and we can go do the checks again. Can you click the X real quick? And again, we can save, but I don't want to run. I just want to show you one other thing. So if you can exit out of automation settings for me. All right, go to any character you want. Click on the pencil for me. All right. Let's say you want to just automate this character. You're going to test the waters, see what the mods are going to do based on the stats we've given it. If you click automate in here, it's going to check just her. And it's going to say, can you hit this? Can you not? So what you're seeing is an automation just on a single character if you want to test the water. So I just wanted to call that out because if you put them up, and it's like, well, it's the third character in the thing or wherever it's at. Can you hit it? No, I can't hit it. All right, well, we need to go adjust.
By the way, this is a frequently asked question when people are looking at mods in this view. They'll say, what does it mean that there's a portrait of the character over certain mods? And what that means is, when you're looking at a view like this, and let's say that you've got only 3 of these mods are on Ahsoka Tano, right? They have her picture on it. That means that those are the ones that are equipped to her in game. The other 3 mods that it's suggesting that you move in here are not currently equipped to her. In fact, they're not equipped to anybody because if they were, they would have the little portrait icon showing who we'd be taking them from. So that's how to read that. And then if you see here for health, if you put your cursor over the first column where it says 183, sorry. Yeah, there. So there you have it. The required minimum is stated there. Put your cursor over the middle column. Tells you anything different. Okay. Yeah. It's I think the left is what the requirement is. What the middle column is what you have, and then the far right column is the delta. How far off you are from the target. So I think what it's saying is the best that it could do is to give 183,000, which is still 190. I don't know. How does it interpret that? What is the first column there, TJ?
It's exactly what you said. It's saying currently this is her rec. We ran the automate, and that's middle.
Oh, the middle is what it would be changing to.
Right, that's what it's going to. Right, and so it's like saying
so as a function of trying to hit all of the targets, it would re-automate and change from the left column to the middle column. It would result, paradoxically, in a loss of health, but that's because it's also working to meet whatever other targets are there, like speed and armor. So that's
and the nice thing is what you'll see on the left-hand side anything with an asterisk by it, so stat target, advanced, if I had primaries, if I had sets, you'll see an asterisk that has the inclusive requirement. So I've given it a stat target. And so this is a high overview of a combined setup that I set up for this. I told the system it needs to be 570. I'd like it 580. It must have an armor of 80. It must hit 190k health, and it can hit 200. Now, if I put primaries, you would see an asterisk by it, and if I put sets.
Sorry, could you repeat that?
So which part? Sorry. Anytime you see there's an asterisk next to the wording stat targets advanced, that's where we have something
Something
placed.
has been placed,
So,
a requirement. Yeah.
right.
Okay.
Right. If there is nothing else, if you look, I don't have any primaries on there. I don't have any sets because there's no asterisk. So if you're not sure why something is failing, like if you didn't look it up and it's red, you can see here because there's been times where I've done an automation and I'm telling it to hit a number that is unreasonable because I'm telling it you must have a health circle, and I'm telling it to go build into a protection style. Same thing if I'm telling it I want you to have 260 tenacity. Well, that's going to take a whole bunch of tenacity sets, but I'm telling the system currently is pulling health sets. So it's going to try to automate and it's going to fail because it's not able to hit the numbers that I'm giving it with the current recs that are on that character.
Mm-hmm. That all clear to you, Striker?
Yep.
Okay, we can get back out. I just wanted to show that if you ever want to do a one-off, you can always go look at a character, run a test on him.
Okay.
So go back to the automate now.
Yeah, let's go back there and see if it remembered all your toggles from beforehand. Okay, so you have Disguise Clone Trooper as the bottom of the template.
Well, there is SM33, but he's not unlocked.
I mean, if he's on the template though, it'll still read it the same way that we're intending, whether or not he's a character that yet exists in the game. So you can choose him, you can choose the character just before him, whatever you're comfortable with.
The basic idea is whatever that character is, anybody behind it's not going to be included in the automate.
Anyone after.
So if you do
after it.
Right, you got it. Right. So as long as you're putting that there, it could be me, it could be anybody else, but just be aware of that. If you set a certain character level, wherever they are in the priority list, anybody that falls behind them is excluded.
Okay. I think those are the targets. Yeah. So you'd hit OK. And now the automate would run. Now, again, like I was saying earlier, this depends on your device, on how quickly this is going to go. I would expect this to be 20 to 30 minutes because I know Striker's running this from a computer. So we're not going to obviously sit here and wait through that, but at the end of it, you'll get a report. If you click the details tab, I want to say skeleton of what that format would be. At the end of this, it's going to tell you what characters failed. You'll be able to see why they failed. When we back out of the automation view and we're looking at the characters again, you would see all of the red pencils for everything failed. You'd be able to scroll up and down and see who passed and who failed and who was marginal, hitting the required but not the desired. Now, if you want to go ahead and hit the stop for us here, Striker.
One other thing I'll say,
sure.
there'll be another view that comes up when you're done. It's called summary.
Mm-hmm.
So the nice thing that it'll do is when you're completed, to the left of progress, whatever else, you'll see summary. You can click on that summary. It's going to give you all of the stats broken out and just the high level view. The details is great for your digging in, but if you just want to look at the goods, the bads, it'll show it. And then it'll tell you on the reorders, and it'll also tell you failed units. So you don't have to go and look at all the specifics if you don't want to.
Yes, and now if you stop this automation, just a helpful thing that I want to show. So this is what it would look like, by the way. If we let it complete, and let's say it did everything, it would tell you this is what it says when a character fails. remove stat targets unable to find set. That means in all of your mods, it was not able to find a set to satisfy those stat targets. Now, you could take a screen grab of that and save it if you wanted to, or whatever, to hold that off to the side to be a quick reference for whatever you failed. But if you hit OK, bottom, and dismiss this window, you can't get that window back now. But if you wanted to look up, oh crap, who were all those failed targets? At the top right in that drop key, the big drop key, to the left. Yep, left there, left it. Just
He's talking about the search bar. Go to your search bar.
The big drop key search bar. Yeah. That one. Yes. In there, if you click it, there's failed requirement. This will show every character that failed a required target. And it'll sort them all out like that. And then, of course, if you look back in the drop key, there's, failed desired. There's all these other filters you could do to view your characters. Whatever you find convenient and helpful. But generally, I'm using failed requirement. That's really the only one that I'm thinking about. So okay, so we've completed, let's say that we completed an automation. We got these failed targets. So some ways that we might, this is some of the troubleshooting stuff now that we've created a template, we've made our specs, we've run an automation to those specs, and now we see, man, we've got a whole bunch of failed characters. Now comes the troubleshooting and massaging the template and trying to make it work. So let's take a look at Sith Eternal Emperor, for example. Yeah, click his pencil. And let's go to, I see in stat targets.
So if you look, I've got advanced, primaries, and sets as all all asterisk, meaning I've got something in each one of them.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm telling the system you must hit 470. I'm telling the system you must use health, primaries, and or speed.
Yeah.
Go to sets. And you'll see I'm telling no outside sets. You have to use a speed set and or a health set. That's it. You can't intervene.
Yeah.
And also no broken sets, meaning it must be the 4 speed and it must be 2 health.
Now, again, I like to go up to that advanced view if I'm going to do any editing of targets and stuff like that. So let's go up there. Before and TJ is welcome to interject here, but before I go and start changing my stat requirements and stuff, the first thing I like to check is the weights tab to see, how it was set up before and if I want to make any adjustments there. Usually I'll do this first and then adjust stat targets anyway. I don't usually just adjust this and then run another automation to see if it'll fit. I'll do this in conjunction with changing stat stuff. So
I never really mess with the weights tab, but I agree with the sentiment. What I'll do is looking at what happened, say for Striker on that. To me, I'd remove like all of the other things as long as my goal is I want to keep the numbers. So looking at the weights, that's fine. And I don't disagree with it. But when I'm looking at things like this, when you start hitting fails, it's you're giving it too many limitations. So I'd be looking at removing like the primaries. I'm going to let it do its job. I'm going to remove the ability for no broken sets. Those are the key things. But I agree. I'm keeping the base because I don't care what you do or what you use. You must hit said number.
Sure, that's fine. Anyway, the weights you can kind of fiddle with at your own leisure. Mm-hmm. I've always, just kind of set them. I only toggle with them for characters that I'm failing, right? I in general am letting this thing do its own thing. But where my characters are going to fail, I'll make adjustments to try and help it along. Now we can go to the required stat targets. And this is something I've helped with countless people over the years with meeting TW specs. You can take a look at, the guild demands that you have, 470 speed, which isn't high for Sith Eternal, but also 210,000 health, which is pretty aggressive. You got to have some pretty good health mods there. That's a damn fine bit of speed. Fine bit of health. You're not meeting that. You know why? Because you've already done an automation and you see that you failed it. Okay, fine. Now we can lower this minimum target, I would say, to 200,000. And then if you were to do another automation and you still failed for health, you could lower it to 190 like that. This is what I mean, where you can go in and start, massaging the requirements. It'd be nice if you could hit all these minimums, but you're also actually trying to have your characters be serviceable, so you have to move things as you need to.
You can also just fluctuate the understanding, and this is where the modding comes into play, because maybe the requirement of health is a bigger priority than the speed. So it's just understanding your character and what it's achieving, where it's like 470 would be nice, but I must hit 210
But
on the
that's where the
health. So
weights
that
come
that
into effect, right? Because you said that this thing is going to look at both
right,
requirements equally as requirements. So
right.
you would need to use the weights to tell it which one to prioritize.
I've pushed the weights down to even it out, but I've also adjusted the numbers on it, just understanding the character as well. So doing the weights is one way to do it, but you can also move your weights down to even out. The weights is tell the system's priority to go look for these pieces. But if you also know the numbers that you can or can't hit, you can weights and remove the weights down and keep the specs up, if that makes sense. It's understanding the character and what it's trying to do, that maybe speed isn't the big thing. Maybe 470 is not going to be achievable, but I need 210. You can make the adjustments there as well.
And is that clear to you, Striker? Is that making sense?
I'm not entirely sure what these numbers are saying to me. Like, what
Yeah.
is the,
Do it by feel is what I was trying to say earlier. Like, would you say how much more important is it to you that you hit the health target than you hit the speed target?
Right.
Like, you could say that you for your number, if you have a character who has one overriding stat that matters more than everything, make that super high, 90 plus. If you have something, like for example, you could say that if you were going to go with a speed and bulk mod invader, like you were intentionally wanting to have speed, then you might rank health and speed equally, or one just slightly ahead of the other, but both of them fairly high, like in the 80s or the 90s. Again, that's by feel because it's all about where those are placed relative to other priority stats. And you'll see that a whole bunch of these stats are properly set to 0. In fact, physical damage shouldn't be on there at all because this is Sith Eternal, right? So I mean, you could adjust these, and it just you're helping the tool
Right.
prioritize what's more important to based on what's actually required.
okay?
This is just putting out the weighting requirements for your mods of what you're trying to look at. We're trying to focus on health as 98% of what it's going to do. And then the next thing we want to look at, and it's got a 53% priority, right? So on a level of 100, health is the ultimate key, and I think that's what Task is talking about. I agreed on the physical damage. I think it was just an old template. We put it there where it'd be special, but it's telling the system you must focus on health as your priority. Then we're going to give it out of 100. Speed is next, and then third, for whatever reason. And again, this is an old template. It's going to look at physical damage. The piece I take into account right now, and you may not be able to hit it with the requirements, is you may be able to hit your 210 health, funny enough, and that's not with health primaries. You may be able to hit the 210 health, and that's not with a speed set and a health set. Maybe it needs to be all 3 health sets, but you hit those numbers. Those limitations are on this C requirement. So maybe what you need to do is go back to the primary section and just remove those requirements. Maybe you need to go and look at the sets and remove those set requirements. Maybe this is stopping you. This is why I said keeping the numbers and then keeping what tasks come up with the weights is the ultimate baseline. So maybe just remove this, remove the health, and remove the
Yeah, I would
outside
just
set.
uncheck that, right? Like
Right.
the nice thing
Yep.
about making like when you set a health target of 210,000, intuitively you're not doing that
Right.
outside of, health sets. So you
And
don't
now
have to tell
remove,
it
so
that.
use global setting before you do it. Use global setting. Don't say no broken sets. And then also primaries. So go to your primaries for me. Don't limit the system that's going to pull health or speed. Just remove those.
Those
Because
last
we
two,
know
yeah.
we want the 210. Yeah, so it's like we're making it even easier. It's going to have the weight check, and it's going to have the stat line, and then it's like, go wild, go figure it out for me.
And then the last thing. So we've taken a look at adjusting weights. We've taken a look at adjusting required and or if you needed to desired stat targets before you would automate. Well, see, TJ showing you that you can automate a single character from this view is useful, I think, if you want to see whether or not you could hit a certain spec at all, because what that automate is doing is automating only just for one character. And it isn't important to me to see whether or not I can do it at all, it's whether or not I can do it in context, right?
So, and also it shows right now your current is 477 with a health of 199. After the check, it'll hit the 470, so there's your green, and then it's getting, based on what it has, to 209, 278. And what Task talked about, which is perfect, is off of the automation based on the priority, it's going to steal a mod from GG. It's going to take one from Bane. It's going to take one from, yeah. So you see what it's doing. So that's, and then there's the ones who are already on there. So it's pulled from where it needs to pull to hit the check.
Clear?
Yep.
So you just did a single automate, which told us that it is possible. What it didn't tell us is how well it could actually achieve that in context of remodding the whole template, right?
Right.
Just modding a single character. Anyway, we can close out of this, right, TJ?
Yeah, you're good. It's like
I think
it's
we
just not going to
saved
save
what we were
anything.
saving already, so that's cool.
Yeah, the automation that you're testing is not automating for the entire thing, so it's not going to do anything.
So now, we adjusted the weights, we adjusted those desired required stat targets. You just did a little extra automate to check and see if it was even possible for you to do. The last thing that you can do is close this window, and I'm not saying you need to for this case, but the last thing would be to check its priority here in the placement to see, is C, from building out these specs yourself, oh, did I put any of these other characters in all
Right.
health sets? And how would I rate their priority compared to Sith Eternal? So I should move Sith Eternal up in line to where he should be, type of thing.
And this is just to be aware, this is the priority that you have based on your check and that search box. These are all of your failed requirements, and this is the priority of failed requirements. When you remove that requirement, it's going to show you everybody. So I just wanted to call it out.
Yeah. This is only showing, right. This is filtered only to show your failed requirements.
Now you have everybody. So right now, if you were telling me that your C is in the second slot, meaning it's the second most important character, and I can't hit that spec, it's pretty safe to say moving it to the primary is not going to change anything.
Right. And in fact, if you're to do another automation and that did fail, that does tell you that it's not a matter of priority. It really is the targets that are too aggressive, or you just don't have the mods to achieve the targets, but it's definitely not a matter of priority. Right.
No, yeah. If it's down at the bottom, then you could think that. But when you've gotten this, and I know it's come to Task, and I know it's come to me, and if you've moved your character to the very top, even the top row, and the numbers are just not achievable when you check the automation or whatever else, then it's like we have to start adjusting. And then that's where the knowledge base of, one, your account, but two, the character of, I'm not hitting this, I need to drop it by 10,000. But I want to keep the speed. Those are the ideas where you start to gain as you continue to use the tool.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so having done all that, we did an automation. We failed targets on Sith Eternal. We came on in. We adjusted targets, adjusted weights. Didn't need to adjust position on the template itself because it's already so high. Now, if we wanted to, we'd repeat this for all of the other failed requirements that we have from this last automation, do all the same reordering, all of that stuff, and then go back to automate and run it again. Same requirements, same setup as before, but now, hopefully we've put some more useful guidance to the bot and it's able to move everything in. And you should, if you don't pass everything on that second go, if you're moving in the right direction, you should be having fewer failures. So then you're repeating the process with fewer and fewer characters, and that's how you end up dialing yourself in over time. DJ, you got notes about this section?
It is literally just a trial and error. I think you nail it as far as what it's going to be. And as you get and as you start building your tool out, you'll start seeing where you can make adjustments. Understanding your priority, I think, is another big one. If you're doing like your TW stuff and you have one template, certain characters are going to start taking priority. Like a Data Crown comes out, it's like, ooh, because right now, if you look where we see Star Killer, it's GAC, makes sense. C, sure, why not? Dark Trooper Mock Gideon, Magma Trooper. So that's when you'll see it's like, I wanted it to hit something because I had a specific requirement. So you'll see that General Veers. Well, that doesn't make sense where General Veer is going to be, say, over Lord Vader now. So you can maneuver your characters, and taking that priority is a big deal.
Okay, Striker. We've done a lot of talking in your ear here, a lot of information dump. I think we're mostly through the tutorial on getting you all the way through automation and doing some iterations on that. But, as a new user to this feature yourself, what questions do you have for us?
I think I asked them as I was going along, really.
Okay, that's good.
I mean, there are a load of other options under the mods bit that are completely foreign to me.
Same to me as well. I'll be honest with you. Like, as far as my own personal usage, and you hear me admit to this on stream all the time. I'm very knowledgeable about using this to meet my guild's requirements for TW, and I'll use this for that. But I don't do this for my own personal GAC mod. All of that I do in game still to this day. I don't do anything outside of the game with. So, as far as all these other features that you might make use of, that's a different tutorial from somebody else because I have no idea.
You can do
that's fine.
you can do a lot of things like opening the packs. You can open. That's why I love HotUtils, and they have a lot of how-to guides on their Discord. They have a lot of different channels that goes over some of the things you want to use, like your Grand Ivory. You can do if you want to look at opening up all the mods and getting them where they're going to be at. So it can do all of the math. And it can also give you an analysis of what your mod looks like. So a lot of people will do it on their Discord where they'll pull their mod score or those things. That's this tool doing the job for you on the back end. For me, I live and breathe in Playground is pretty much. So it's loadouts and playgrounds because I'm going to go and tweak a character. So like the point of what you just did and saw on your Striker, we know that Apple and CX2 are basically at the bottom of the pool. We know that's wrong. So immediately when I come in and see things like that, I'm going to bring them up to where I'm at. And then that's where I'm going to start tweaking the system, meaning I'm going to start looking at the characters again. I'm going to start seeing what my mods can do with comparison. And obviously, those two, as a prime example, are going to be key characters. So they're going to move to like the top of the list.
I think one final thing to point out. Once you've saved it and you've got the loadout, you actually want to put it into game.
Yes, that's where the load button would not be grayed out because you see that the mods that we were working with earlier, it shows as active in the previous thing, so you don't have the load button to hit when it is in fact the active loadout. So you would hit load, and then it would put it into game for you. You have to wait until it's done. It'll put up a progress bar and everything.
So right, and then the other thing is if you are over your cap. The other things that Task talked about, some of the more advanced people will do is you have the option to do what they call split. So if you're running into a point where like I have extra mods and I'm in red. So if you're in red on the template, the load will always be grayed out. And as long as you're not above the threshold we talked about, where you can only have a certain amount of extra mods that are not attached, you have the option to do what they call split. So can you click split for me? All right. So split. What Task talked about is accurate and what you can do. You're going to pick your template that you would want to do the split on. So let's say it's the 3v3. All right. If we're looking at it, you can give it a number base where it's going to cut off the amount of characters that you're going to do. So right now it says there's max number of units per loadout of 10. We're talking about 292 or whatever it is characters right now today. It's only going to pull 10 at a time. And it's going to try to basically split the mods off, load what you've told it, and then move the other mods to the side. That's why we're saying you only have a certain threshold, and why Task talks about keeping so many open and keeping your mods cleaned up, because even then it can only move with a certain threshold. If you want to auto load split, that means what I'm doing is I'm taking my 10 characters, I'm doing what the template said, I'm loading the mods that are going to move from everywhere else. It's going to automatically do that.
Right.
If you do it at 10 times, that is telling me, just to finish up with Task, if you do it for only a max of 10, that means it's got to do it 29 times. Mm-hmm. So if you're getting that, I reference, and what I generally do if I ever have to, God forbid, is I keep it to about 25. I don't want to go really any higher than that, because what Task talked about is true. If you deleted a mod, if you did any changes, because again, this is a timestamp of what's happening in your system, it will break the entire split or automation you're trying to do. Go ahead, Tess. I just wanted to make sure I call that out.
Well, yeah. So just a couple notes. If you don't hit that auto load splits checkbox, it's just going to create a different pane like what you have behind you with all your loadouts split out. It'll have the same name of your loadout -1, -2, -3, and then it'll be incumbent on you to load them all in sequence manually.
You got it.
If you check the box, it will go ahead, cut them up, and load them in sequence. However, what it's doing, if you think about it, is you're using this because you're constrained on empty mod space, right? And so if it's going to be shuffling around enough mods to mod 10 characters and then load the next set, it's going to be unequipping, re-equipping mods to characters, hacking and slashing along the way to do this umpteen times. And that's why it makes the point of saying that doing it this way will, probably cost you more credits than it would otherwise take, like in a straight run. Also, it's going to take extra time. And so...
yeah, mod maintenance is a key thing.
I do... this is why, if you didn't have any other questions, I did want to summarize us here. So I would just check. I mean, do you have anything else you wanted to ask us, though, before I start to recap about what we covered?
No, I'm all good.
Okay. So where we started from, we logged in and we refreshed HotUtils so that it had just the most recent snapshot of whatever we done with our mods. Although, ideally before we logged in, it doesn't matter, I guess, in terms of sequence at this point, but ideally you will have already logged in. You either use HotUtils itself to slice through all of your mods that you haven't been taking care of, or if you're like me, do it manually in game, but you should try to slice through and minimize the number of mods that you are holding outside of characters as much as possible. You can have up to 500. So like we started off with at the beginning of this example, Striker's got 463 of 500 unequipped mod slots open. I'm sorry, not open, filled. He's got so much mod inventory. So if he were to do an automation, he'd run into an issue like what you see here on his screen saying, oh man, if you want to load this template, you've got to free up so many inventory spaces because the bot's not going to have any room to move mods around. So always make sure that you slice through and minimize the total number of mods that you have sitting unequipped as a starting point. Refresh that once you log into HotUtils, and then you're going to go, pull a starter template, or you could do like what TJ said, go to the playground page, hit the reset all settings button. It's going to immediately take a snapshot of whatever all your characters are, just showing them. And then you can go in and start editing requirements on them. First the required targets, then the desired. You can tamper with the set weights. You can specify certain primaries or sets. But the thing to always keep in mind is, as you're making requirements, only make the minimum number of requirements necessary to achieve what you want. If you're setting targets that you know for a fact that cannot be achieved outside of a speed set, you don't need to specify only use speed set. Don't make it do extra checks that it doesn't need. After you've specified all of your settings for, character by character, you're ready to automate. You go over the settings that we covered earlier. I'll show that here again. You set up your automation pre-config and tell it how you want it to go about the work, and you let it fly. Depending on your device, this is minutes or hours, and then it'll finish. It'll give you a report. It'll tell you who failed. And you can also sort out, like we showed earlier, how to show failed requirement characters. From there, you go back and look at those characters, adjust their requirements. If you saw that, after automation, your 210,000 health requirement on Sith Eternal couldn't be met. Damn, it looks like it got 200,000, 204,000 is what it could hit, not 210. Okay, seeing that, I'll make the new target just 200,000 and see how it does, right? And you're going to repeat that. You're going to massage the targets, the stat weights. You'll check for any unnecessary conditions you placed. And then you can also change the order of the character in the placement on the, template itself. After which you automate again. Use the same settings. Go ahead and run it again. And if you're moving in the right direction, you will be having less fails. When you are satisfied, you save it. Or, if you've done a few iterations, you're getting tired, you want to take a break, save it. And then you can always go back to your loadouts, hit the edit button. It'll bring you back to Playground, and you can automate from there and resume your work. Either way, you keep automating until you're satisfied. You save that down, and then you go to your loadouts view, you hit the loadout button, and if all goes well, it'll pop up a progress bar and show you how it's pushing those mods into game. If all does not go well, you're generally going to get one of two errors. You're going to get the error like what we showed first here, showing that you need to free up inventory spaces for it to do the automation, which brings us back to TJ's point where if you hadn't cleared out the space, like I was saying, you could use the split feature to divide your loadout into X number of sub-loadouts that then have to be loaded in sequence. And that has, it works, but it has its own foibles and issues, and I prefer to avoid it. I think, an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure, so I prefer not to use that feature myself, but you could get the job done that way. The other error that you might get is, say you do your automation, you've made your template, and you don't have this issue with not having enough inventory. You've just gone in now and cleared it out, but now it says, oh, well, you made your loadout first, you cleared out mods second because you saw that you have this red error saying you needed to do it. Now there's a new error saying your loadout is missing 4 mods. So now you have a choice. Do you hit edit, go back to Playground, and re-automate for the sake of just a couple of mods? Or do you just load in the template, go in game, and sort by empty mod slots and see who's missing mods and fill it in from there? I would say if it's only just a couple of mods like that, 2, 3, 4, 5, no problem. If it's a few dozen, maybe I'm going to hit the edit button and go back and re-automate, something like that, okay? So those are reasons why we have those best practices about the inventory, but regardless, that takes you all the way to the end. You're able to hit load, you push the template into game, you can lock in for Grand Arena, for TW, what have you. And because at the start of the journey, you took a snapshot here of your mods as they were before we did the automation, you can always go back. That takes us from the cradle to the grave on the subject. Striker, I know you said you had no more questions, but did you have anything else you wanted to say before I hand it over to TJ?
No, just thank you very much for taking the time.
Super pleasure. This is a very much a very highly requested video. So, really appreciate you making the time as a novice user to be here and ask the questions that a lot of, new users would ask. So appreciate you being here. TJ, before we wrap this one up, other notes from you, tips and tricks, Points of advice. What else you have for the folks at home?
The tool is great, but there's nothing like doing stuff the old-fashioned way as well. I know that the tool can adapt to being able to do it, but while Taz says I love the tool, but I will still go in and manually look at a character. Another thing I will tell you, because you're looking at 290 plus characters, when you're done doing the animation and you've pushed it to game, do me a favor, just go check in game and look. A lot of times, if you've given it a stat, it may pull a mod that's not fully maxed out. I've done it a number of times where not every line is blue or not every line is gold, and there's a blue line because it gave the requirement and it met it, but it pulled a mod that was 12 and not 15. So just do the double check in game. Don't just assume everything is all gold.
Yeah.
And that everything is all done.
By the
So
way,
like check your pilots, do the other things like that. Always do that.
yes, that's true. Yes, after you've loaded in your template, go in, check in the game manually that you do actually have all mods, all characters that need to be equipped, having mods equipped. Sort by your pilots, like TJ just said, ensure that they have, ideally 6 dots on, or if not everybody, you're able to prioritize and make sure that the key ones get it first. But something that I just remembered, could you hit edit on our loadout there and bring us back to the playground for a quick second? DJ said something that just triggered a memory for me. So you can see, I guess we never formally explained at the bottom of each character pane, the individual settings and their targets and how well they're meeting them is shown by the pencil icon. The middle one is the lock button that TJ mentioned earlier, where if you hit the lock, they will be excluded from consideration for automation. They will keep the mods that they have on as of now. The one to the left of it, the left checkbox, don't click it lightly, because what it will do is remove them from this template. So if this were a Grand Arena template, there's a whole host of characters that will never get used in Grand Arena. You and I know it. You could just as easily remove them from the template so they're a complete non-factor. The only issue is that if you ever wanted them back, you just have to go and hit add and add the character back. There isn't an undo for that. So, you can consider how you might want to trim a loadout. To TJ's point, not every loadout for every purpose needs to consider 292 characters. So prune that at your own will. TJ, I'm sorry. I wanted to make sure I didn't
the only
lose
thing
that
I'll
one.
say is, no, I think it's a great call add. The only other thing is the tool can also be broken out if you want to do teams. So we talked about a generalization, but to what Tass is saying, if you want to build a raid team, Fatal was really good about giving out those general public tools of a mod set he uses, and he gave it to all of Swiggle, which is great. You can build your raid teams and give those mods, and as long as you have that timestamp, so that red box setup, you can easily build it out, and then when you're done, just go restore the original setup. So just calling that out, that this can be done for one character, this can be done for a team. You can literally break it down as far as you want to go, but there's nothing like checking in game as well.
Oh man, I just realized I had my mic on there for a second. Yeah, I was just saying that, well, again, thank you, TJ and Stryker, for making the time. This feature, the automate, isn't something I'm personally using a lot for Grand Arena, but you could scarcely do better than to have an old seasoned hand like TJ here to show you the ropes on how to build it up from scratch. So again, thanks to you both for making the time. And of course, if you want to catch me streaming my Grand Arena live, then you already know I'm at twitch.tv/Tassinix. I also simulcast on YouTube, where you're seeing this video, Tassinix Gaming. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, hit subscribe on the channel to see more. And until next time, it's been real. It's been awesome. It's been real awesome. Take care.